There's no way that planet is a death world. You must be mistaken. The council chamber of the Galactic Concord was a place of reason, science, and cold logic. Here, the most powerful minds of the known galaxy debated, legislated, and classified the myriad worlds under their dominion. And now they were laughing. High Administrator Velrax, a veteran of planetary classifications, curled his mandibles in amusement as he reviewed the report. Planet, Earth Sol, 3. Climate, temperate, abundant in water, oxygen-rich. Native species, Homo sapiens, human. Threat level? That last part had been the source of much debate. Some overzealous researchers had proposed ranking it as a Class 5 death world. That was absurd. Death worlds were places of extreme hostility, planets bathed in radiation, choked with poison, or plagued by apex predators that turned entire biospheres into killing fields. Earth by all metrics was a paradise. Velrax tapped his talon on the table. A world with breathable air, edible flora, and stable seasonal cycles is a death world? Ridiculous. You might as well classify my homeworld as one too. Across the chamber, an uneasy silence settled over the scientists who had submitted the report. One of them, a reptilian being named Dr. Keln, swallowed nervously. Sir, with respect, we urge you to reconsider. The data suggests. Velrax waved him off. Enough. The Concord will not entertain fear-mongering. Earth is to be classified as a Tier 1 standard habitable world. Final decision. And with that, humanity's fate was sealed. A world that defied expectations. The first contact mission was supposed to be routine. A delegation of Concord envoys would arrive, make peaceful contact, and assess whether humanity was ready for galactic integration. A fleet of sleek diplomatic vessels arrived in Earth's orbit, sending friendly broadcasts on all known frequencies. But when they expected polite curiosity, they were met with suspicious silence. Velrax, overseeing the mission from orbit, frowned at the lack of response. Are their transmission systems primitive? The comms officer hesitated. No, sir, they intercepted our messages. They're just not responding. A pit formed in Velrax's stomach. No civilization ignored first contact unless they had something to hide. Still, protocol dictated a personal visit. A landing party was dispatched to Earth's largest city, what humans called New York. They expected formal greetings. Instead, they got war machines. The moment their ships entered the lower atmosphere, missiles launched from hidden platforms. The sky erupted in fire, and the escort ships barely managed to raise shields in time. Velrax's eyes widened in horror. They have planetary defense systems? On a paradise world. The humans weren't waiting to talk. They were testing Concord defenses. Survivors of a perfect hell. The diplomatic team was forced to retreat, barely making it back to orbit. Earth had been classified as a paradise, yet its inhabitants acted like survivors of a war-torn death world. Velrax turned to Dr. Keln, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Explain this madness. Keln took a deep breath. Sir, I tried. The signs were there. Earth may look like a paradise, but it is, in reality, one of the most hostile environments in the known galaxy. Velrax scoffed. Nonsense. They have oceans, forests, and stable weather. How is that hostile? Dr. Keln's voice turned grim. Because nature itself is trying to kill them. He pulled up holographic displays of Earth's ecosystem. Weather extremes, superstorms, earthquakes, tsunamis. Predators, apex species like lions, sharks, and bears. Microscopic killers, viruses that mutate at terrifying rates. The human condition, a species that evolved not just to survive but to dominate. Keln's claws shook as he continued. We assumed they would be peaceful, living in balance with their world. But that's not how humans think. They fought nature itself for dominance. They've survived famines, plagues, ice ages, and global wars. And worst of all, they won. Velrax stared in dawning horror. The Concord had miscalculated. Horribly. This was not a species that had been granted a paradise. They had conquered one. The hunters of paradise. It was clear now. Earth was a death world, not because of its environment but because of its inhabitants. Humans had spent their entire history waging war against their own planet. They invented weapons before they built cities. They tamed fire before they understood medicine. They created machines of war before they even reached the stars. And now they saw the Galactic Concord as just another obstacle to overcome. Velrax's mind raced. The Concord had made a grave mistake. They had revealed themselves as a galactic power to a species that only understood two things: friendship or total war. Their reaction to first contact was not fear. It was strategic assessment. Velrax turned to his officers. "We need to leave. Now." Before they... Alarms blared. A human fleet had launched from the surface. Hundreds of primitive-looking ships, barely space-worthy, were already breaking orbit. Their designs were crude, armored, and bristling with weapons. Velrax's blood ran cold. They were coming. The last thing he saw before the fleet jumped into FTL was the humans giving chase. The war for the stars had begun. The escape that wasn't. Velrax's mind raced as the escape protocols activated. Every second mattered. The human fleet, crude and primitive in design, had already broken through the upper atmosphere and was accelerating toward them. They can't possibly keep up with a Concorde fleet. That's what he told himself. He was wrong. Their ships should have been slow, held back by outdated chemical propulsion. But they moved with a terrifying efficiency, as if they had optimized every single component for speed, armor, and overwhelming firepower. "Sir," the comms officer shouted. "They've locked weapons on us." Velrax's mandibles clenched. "Evasive maneuvers. We jump to FTL the moment we clear the gravity well." His fleet surged forward, trying to escape before humanity's weapons could hit. But they were already firing. Space burned as railgun rounds, missiles, and directed energy weapons erupted from the human fleet. They didn't even attempt diplomacy. They fight like a cornered predator. They don't posture. They strike. Concorde shields held, but barely. Velrax watched in horror as one of their escort ships exploded outright. "How? Those are primitive weapons. They shouldn't be breaking through our defenses this quickly." Dr. Keln's voice was hoarse. "They've spent their entire history perfecting the art of war." Another explosion. Then another. The humans weren't just trying to scare them off, they were hunting them. But Velrax's fleet was faster. They burned their engines at maximum output, breaking free of Earth's gravity well just in time to initiate the FTL drive. The stars twisted. Space blurred. They were gone. For now. The galaxy reacts. The moment they returned to Concorde space, the Council was thrown into chaos. The Concorde had believed in absolute military dominance. No species in 1,000 years had been able to resist them. And yet Earth had fought them off. Even worse, the humans had chased them. "They're not a simple warrior race," Dr. Keln explained grimly to the gathered leaders. "There's something far worse. They are an adaptive predator." The room fell silent. Velrax, still shaken from the encounter, spoke next. "We should annihilate them. Deploy the full strength of the Concorde before they have a chance to retaliate." The Supreme Chancellor, a being with a long history of keeping the peace, tapped his claws on the table. "Annihilation is extreme. You're telling me a single pre-FTL species has managed to strike fear into the Concorde?" Velrax's mandibles twitched. "They are not pre-FTL. Not anymore." He pulled up the fleet data. Human ship, UNS Hermes. Classification, experimental FTL-capable warship. Status, still in pursuit. The room went deathly silent. "They followed us into FTL?" The chase. Velrax's fleet had jumped to the far side of the Concorde's core worlds. A safe location far beyond the reach of primitive species. Or so they thought. Because the humans had arrived too. Alarms blared. "Impossible," a technician shouted. "They had no FTL capabilities." Velrax felt his stomach sink. "They do now." On the main display, a single human warship appeared from the void. It was smaller than any Concorde vessel, an experimental construct still covered in the scars of its first-ever FTL jump. Yet it had followed them. They reverse-engineered an FTL drive after a single encounter? Velrax stared at the ship, and for the first time in his life, he felt true dread. They had just introduced a predator to the greater galaxy. And now it was learning how to hunt. The call to war. The humans didn't send a transmission. No grand declaration, no demand for surrender. They simply fired. A single railgun round, moving at relativistic speeds, shattered the first Concorde ship before anyone could react. Velrax roared. "Defensive formation. Return fire." But the humans were already moving. Fast. Their ship weaved between incoming energy blasts, taking impossible turns that no Concorde vessel could replicate. Their engines burned hotter than anything in known space, and their armor, so crude, so primitive, was reinforced beyond reason. They've been fighting Deathworld physics their entire existence. They know how to make things survive the impossible. Another Concorde ship exploded. And another. Velrax gritted his mandibles. They were losing. To a single ship. The Concorde's worst mistake. The battle was over in minutes. The first ever engagement between the Galactic Concorde and humanity had ended in total disaster. Velrax barely managed to retreat, his surviving ships limping back to the core worlds. This was supposed to be a diplomatic mission. This was supposed to be a peaceful integration. Instead, the Concorde had just started a war they couldn't win. Because humanity wouldn't just fight. They would adapt. And if a single ship was capable of this much devastation, what would happen when humanity built a fleet? Velrax turned to Dr. Keln. His voice was hollow. How long before they come? Keln's expression was grim. They're already here. The galaxy panics. The Galactic Concorde was not used to fear. For millennia they had ruled uncontested. Their fleets were unmatched, their technology superior. The idea of an upstart species challenging them, let alone winning a battle against them, was unthinkable. Yet Velrax's fleet had returned in shambles. Half destroyed. Traumatized. Silent. The Concorde's core worlds erupted into chaos. How had a pre-FTL species reverse-engineered an FTL drive in a single encounter? How had a single human warship crippled an entire fleet? And most terrifying of all, if humans were capable of this much devastation now, what would they become in a decade? The answer was simple. A galactic superpower. But the Concorde wasn't ready to accept that. Not yet. A declaration of war. The Concorde High Council convened in emergency session. Total extermination, Velrax demanded. If we do not wipe them out now, we will not get another chance. The other species in the council chamber hesitated. Genocide was distasteful. Unnecessary. Until Dr. Keln spoke. They aren't like us, he said, voice cold. Every species we've encountered required centuries, millennia, to adapt to new technology. Humans don't. They absorb, they refine, and they perfect it within a single generation. He gestured to the wreckage reports. We cannot afford to wait. It wasn't just about humanity's strength, it was their rate of evolution. If they had already closed the technological gap after a single encounter, what would they do if given time? The decision was made. The entire might of the Concorde Armada, 10,000 warships, would descend upon Earth. The human homeworld would burn. The humans were ready. The Concorde fleet arrived in force. 10,000 warships, each capable of leveling continents, emerged from hyperspace above Earth. It was overkill, complete annihilation was the goal. What they expected, a desperate, technologically inferior species pleading for mercy. What they got, a nightmare. Humanity had been waiting for them. Thousands of warships, each custom-built using stolen Concorde technology, rose from Earth's surface like an unholy storm. The Concorde fleet hesitated. These ships were new, slick, aggressive, perfectly engineered for war. They reverse-engineered our technology in months, and improved it. Then without warning, the battle began. The fall of the Concorde Armada. It should have been a massacre. It was, but not the way the Concorde expected. The moment the Concorde fleet moved to engage, humanity unleashed hell. Railguns fired at relativistic speeds, tearing through Concorde shields like they were made of paper. Missiles, guided by AI systems more advanced than anything in known space, turned the battle into a slaughter. The Concorde ships tried to coordinate, but their systems were jammed. Humans had hacked them before the battle even began. Ships exploded. Entire battle formations collapsed within minutes. Velrax, watching from the command ship, could only stare in horror. This isn't a war. This is a predator eliminating competition. For the first time in Concorde history, an armada retreated. Humanity had won. But they weren't done. Humanity ascends. Velrax barely escaped. His fleet, the survivors, limped back to Concorde space. They expected humanity to stay within their system. They had won their survival. That was enough, right? Wrong. Because humanity followed. Newly built human warfleets emerged from hyperspace, deep in Concorde territory. They weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were here to conquer. The end of the Concorde. The Galactic Concorde's core worlds trembled. The unthinkable had happened. A pre-FTL species had not only survived an extermination attempt, they had won. Not just won. They had shattered the greatest fleet the galaxy had ever known. Survivors of the battle limped back to Concorde space, carrying tales of human warships moving like predators, of AI-guided weapons that thought faster than entire armadas, of defenses so advanced that even the most devastating Concorde bombardments failed to make a dent. The High Council met in secret. They had no choice. We must surrender. Velrak stood in silence, rage burning through his veins. Surrender? To a species that hadn't even known hyperspace a few years ago? But he knew the truth. The Concord wasn't just losing, they were already lost. The humans weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were expanding. Their fleets moved with purpose. Concord outposts fell without a single shot fired, the defenders surrendering the moment they saw a human warship on their sensors. Humanity had gone from prey to predator. And they weren't stopping. The final war. Desperation gripped the Concord. They had one last option, one final, desperate move to stop humanity's rise. If we cannot defeat them, we must deny them their victory. The plan was ruthless, scorched space. The Concord would retreat, but not before they burned every world behind them. They would glass their own colonies, collapse their own starports, destroy their own infrastructure. Anything to keep it from falling into human hands. It was genocide. Not of a species, but of an empire. The strategy had one flaw. It assumed humans wouldn't catch them in time. They were wrong. The last stand at Zythos Prime. Zythos Prime, the last major Concord stronghold, became a graveyard. Concord ships scrambled to execute their scorched space plan, but humanity was already there. The human warfleets cut off every escape route. Velrak stood on his bridge, watching as the last Concord fleets faced annihilation. There was no way out. His fleet was surrounded. And then, the human admiral appeared on his view screen. A human woman, her uniform pristine, her eyes cold and calculating. This is Admiral Sinclair of the Terran Ascendancy. Her voice was devoid of anger. Just certainty. The Concord is finished. Surrender and you will live. Velrax clenched his fists. Live? As what? As prisoners? As relics of a fallen empire? He opened his mouth to refuse, but his officers were already dropping their weapons. One by one, Concord ships powered down their weapons. The war was over. The dawn of a new empire. With the fall of Zythos Prime, the Concord ceased to exist. And humanity took its place. The galaxy held its breath. Humanity had won in record time. They had risen from galactic nobodies to the most powerful military force in known space. Would they rule with mercy? Would they demand vengeance? The answer came swiftly. They did neither. The Terran Ascendancy didn't just take over Concord space. They remade it. Instead of enslaving their defeated foes, they absorbed them. Concord species were given citizenship, invited to join the new order rather than fight it. The result? Humanity grew even stronger. Their military swelled with new recruits. Their technology expanded with the knowledge of entire civilizations. What had started as a desperate war for survival had become something else entirely. A conquest. But not through blood. Through dominance. And with their power secured, humanity turned its eyes outward. Not just to the galaxy, but to what lay beyond. A message to the universe. The last words of Admiral Sinclair echoed across the stars, broadcast from the ruins of the Concord's homeworld. Humanity does not seek war, but we will never run from it. We do not seek destruction, but we will never tolerate a threat. The age of the Concord is over. The age of humanity has begun. And for the first time in galactic history, the universe listened. The end, or the beginning. Humanity was underestimated. Now, they are the most powerful force in the galaxy. But what happens next? What lies beyond their borders? Don't miss the next chapter of humanity's rise. Subscribe now.